I would like to invite Lisa Joy Rosner up first. LJ, as many people know her, and I have known each other for a long time. She is a marketer extraordinaire. She was CMO of MyBuys, and then NetBase, and then Neustar, and most recently was at Oracle as an SVP of brand and digital marketing, I believe it was. So Lisa is going to conduct a panel of other marketers to hear about what trends they are concerned about and interested in.
Thank
LJ.
you. Good. All right, home stretch. So Brian, thank you. I have been working with LUMA for a really long time, and as he said, in the early days when it was even more exciting to make it onto a LUMAscape than it was to be on the right spot in MQ. And then was on the other side doing deals and acquiring companies and integrating them. So it's a pleasure to be here. I missed this event, and it's a thrill to be here. So we're in for a treat. We were just talking about know your customer, and what we have here are 3 customers, 3 people who work with a lot of the technologies that we've been talking about today. It's an incredible panel. I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves. We are at sort of the end of the year, and I'd like all of you to just introduce yourself and share with everyone, since we are all data-driven marketers, a key accomplishment, a measurable accomplishment that you are really, really proud of. And Shweta, we'll start with you.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Shweta Merchant. First, I just want to share that I have a background in management consulting, M&A, marketing, and operations, and it's just wonderful to actually see all these worlds intersect at this conference. I hadn't had that experience before, so it's great. I've been with Intuit for 4.5 years now, and I started in our corporate strategy and development team, and then I moved to my current role around 2 years ago. I lead strategy, so strategic initiatives, planning and operations for our marketing, communications, enterprise partnerships, and corporate responsibility teams. I sit within our corporate marketing team, but work very closely with all of our segment marketers and communicators. From a stats perspective, I will share a stat that's not actually been discussed before, but I think it's very important from an employee engagement and growth perspective, because talent, as we know, is so important. One of the teams that I lead at Intuit is our learning and development team for marketers and communicators, and we just rounded up our survey. We just finished our survey. We had 91% satisfaction amongst our learners. It's a 1,000+ person community. And that, again, is testament to the amount of investment that we make in ensuring that we are training our marketers and communicators in what's current in the market, as well as helping establish the Intuit way of doing things to be able to drive at scale.
That's fantastic. What a perfect segue to Kim.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Caldbeck. I've been the Chief Marketing Officer at Coursera for the last 5 years. We're an online marketplace that brings courses to degrees from top universities and industry partners to the world. And I have been there 7.5 years, recently making the transition from that to advisor and board member, so looking for new opportunities independently. Prior to Coursera, I spent some time at 5 years at Facebook doing business marketing, product marketing, performance and brand consumer marketing, and prior to that was at Apple doing iPhone app marketing. So I've worked in different elements of this space for a while. In terms of fun stat, so my journey at Coursera has gone from kind of Series B to post-IPO. This year we hit 100 million learners served, and we'll be over 500 million in revenue. And so that's a lot of our growth journey and impacting learners over 80% outside the US. So it's a very global business.
That's fantastic. Keith?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Just want to say this has been a privilege just to spend time with all these wonderful minds. But big picture, my name is Keith McLeod. I lead our marketing operations team at the New York Times. Marketing operations is one of those nebulous functions that are never the same no matter where you go. So it's actually a group made up of 7 different functions, everything from marketing compliance, both subscription revenue, as well as privacy, creative operations. I have a marketing tech component as well, web and QA development. So big picture, my my function kind of sits strategically between the strategy and execution, working with product, engineering, data. So I kind of view my team as like where the rubber meets the road, really turning the what and helping people determine the how. The fun stat that I think I'm really proud of is the fact that this quarter during our earnings call, we had 180,000 subscribers this quarter on our way to our 2027 goal of 15 million subscribers. And the reason why that's really a significant number is because when you think about the fact that a lot of the other subscription companies were declining, we were finding a way to actually keep the avenue going forward. So that's highly impressive, and my team plays a very significant role in making all that happen. As far as if you see any subscription advertisement, whether it be brand or acquisition, my team plays a very big part in that.
Should we find out how many are subscribers here? Want to show by hands? Okay, pretty good.
All right.
So that's the good news. The last couple weeks have been pretty intense. And in preparing for this panel, I talked to a bunch of CMOs to find out, what's happening. And I'm hearing everything from 10 to 30 to 50 to 60% budget cuts. And I'm not asking you to share your budgets, but I'm curious with these headwinds going into the new year, what are you choosing to keep and what are you choosing to cut? How are you deciding to adjust things in real time to what's going on in the market? And Keith, I think we'll start with you.
Oh, sure. Some of you might have read this. So earlier this year, we had a very popular acquisition, Wordle. Any Wordle players in the house here, right? And so, that was a really significant acquisition on our side that really had a really phenomenon, and we were able to leverage that into a tremendous amount of starts. In parallel, before we had the acquisition, we were working on a new product called Kids, right? An app that would be focused on kids exclusively. And unfortunately, we actually had to stop that product holistically at the times, right? Because we want to divert all resources to where it actually makes sense, where the headwinds are actually going. So we're making some very significant changes right now to really pivot, and which I'm really proud of because we're not married to the strategy, right? In January, we said we're going to go left. September, we're going right now, right? And we have to be fluent, and we're very happy that we're able to make those significant changes. And the other thing too, we're also, as we keep pivoting, the print business, right, is somewhat in decline, but still a very valuable asset to us, and we're trying different ways to minimize our involvement in print while keeping the quality of the paper at a very high level.
What about you, Kim? You were telling me about getting the plan all done before you left.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're in a similar spot to what many of you have been talking about and hearing today, but obviously moving into a situation with lower growth rates and more uncertainty and a drive towards more profitability. And so with that, we are in those scenarios of cutting back budgets for next year. And the places where we're really focusing are the kind of strategy that we laid out from a marketing perspective for the year was maintain our brand trust, make sure we focus on the segments and regions where we win, and then put ourselves in a position to take advantage of tailwinds once the tide turns. And so the way we've thought about that are, we're pulling back from more short-term optimizations in paid media, cutting lower ROI activities, cutting more experimental channels, but we're investing in places like SEO, articles, and content marketing that we know are going to have return both next year and into the future. We're investing more in areas like unifying our tech stack, making sure that we're in a position to run highly efficient nurture campaigns we have both high touch and degrees and enterprise segments. And so really thinking about how we can reach many more degree students, move them through the funnel from everything from, at the top of funnel, on-site chat, email systems, all the way through one-to-one, one-to-many WhatsApp messaging, all the way to actual phone calls. And so we're still really investing in how we make those systems much more efficient so that as the students come back, we're in a position to really scale at a higher leverage than our competition.
But what are you cutting?
Oh, yes. We're cutting more of the paid, lower ROI paid media, cutting back on more brand and experimental channels, and then cutting back in regions where we're just less efficient right now.
Yeah, and Shweta, Intuit just went through this big rebrand. You've brought in a lot of different brands and done a full integration. But as you go into 23, what are you cutting? What are you keeping?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of similarity to the themes that Kim just mentioned. We are actually heading into peak season, right? When you think about tax as one of our big business units, we're preparing for peak season. And so when we think about where we invest, we want to make sure that we are using our owned and paid channels as effectively as possible so that we can drive to the business outcomes that we have. That said, where we are investing from an own perspective is driving more of the personalized communications. Through social, we are continuing to lean more into influencers. So the panel today was actually very interesting. We're leaning more into understanding how TikTok can work better for us. We are continuing to find ways in which we invest in our data in getting good, high-quality data so that our marketers and communicators can actually run much better and faster data-driven decisions, right? So we're building a culture of experimentation. So we have an in-house platform that we've built. So we're trying to get our marketers and communicators, again, to be able to run these experiments so that when they go out and scale these campaigns, they're actually more efficient than they might have been. Again, better use of the resources that we have. Where we're cutting, I would say, again, fewer experimental campaigns than we might have done in the past. And we are also just, again, discretionary budgets where it makes sense. We're looking at all of them and making sure we're being very choiceful in where we spend.
It's interesting that you talk about influencers. I just read an article the other day that Tiffany's, a brand different than the ones we have here, invested $30 million in an ad with Beyonce. And they put it out there and it got about 1.6 million views. Then they engaged an influencer on TikTok, just a goofy little TikTok video, put it out, 5.6 million. And that, I mean, essentially free by comparison. So I do think we're going to see, I don't think that the experimentation should go away. It's just what kind of experimentation. And as the budgets get tightened, it's almost Darwinian. We have to be more and more creative and find ways to be scrappy and do things that to the creativity that Terry was talking about. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about data. And this has been one of the things we've been talking about all day. But when you look at the data inside your organization, and Keith, I'm going to start with you. Where are the gaps? What's on your agenda? What are you trying to solve right now?
It's almost like, what are we not trying to solve right now? No, seriously. One of the things that we're actually focused on right now, as we think about the big picture, trying to meet our 15 million subscribers in 2027, is reevaluating our tech stack. And that's really everything that we have that we're currently using. And one of those major things is our CDP, right? I think that's a major component that we currently believe is going to help enable us to meet those goals. As someone earlier in one of the breakout sessions talked about, New York Times has done a great job with our first-party data, right? Everything from trying to maximize our ad revenue to knowing our customers for targeting and subscribers. We view the CDP as that linchpin now that's going to actually squeeze the final juice to really accelerate our growth. So that's our biggest pain point right now, because I think we think that there's more to be had, and I know we're in the middle of looking at some of many of the vendors actually here, and so we're curious to see how that goes out. But we're looking for the next greatest technology capabilities that's going to help us meet our goals.
What about you, Shweta?
I would say from a data perspective, we, again, as you said earlier, we've acquired multiple companies, right? And so what we want to make sure is we have ways in which those journeys across the different products, the data that supports these journeys for customers, is in a way that's good quality and usable by our marketers. So again, that's an investment that we've been making over the past couple of years and we'll continue to do.
Yeah, at Oracle, one of the many things that I ran was customer marketing, and we had customer data in literally 90 different systems and a bunch of spreadsheets. And getting it all into one centralized place, I mean, that was the holy grail. It took 2 years before we even got something that was usable.
Yeah.
And continue to iterate.
That's right. And there's also the notion around privacy and consent, right? Because the kind of data that we deal with, it's financial data, and so it's data in the US, it's data in international locations, and so we have to be very careful. It's not like, oh, let's connect everything and there we go. We have to be very careful with all of those considerations. So we have an amazing data team, data science team, our tech team. So we all work together. We have what we call priorities for our marketing and comms community. Again, those are ones that help set help us prioritize what are the areas in which we're going to focus.
What about you, Kim?
I'll +1 to Keith, or +100 to Keith's everything. But I think we're kind of in those awkward teenagers where in the past, Coursera did a lot of homegrown data and technology use. We were early in developing AI algorithms to help target and personalize things, but we operate a much more complex ecosystem now with many more data sources, whether it's our partners or our own, many more segments, many more populations, and many more products that we're trying to market. And so we're trying to catch up, basically. So I think the first thing is really how do we get our marketers access to much more real-time data, and then build on the technology layers that will enable us to continue to scale. And I think one of the challenges that's so apparent in this room as well is there's so many options out there.
Yep.
And especially when you are growing and scaling quickly, right? Our B2B marketers are using some tools, and our degree marketers are using other tools, and sometimes they could be the right solution for both, and other times we've been forced to pick two different paths, and there's just so many pieces that have to fit together, and it's changing so quickly, so it feels like by the time you implement one thing, there's some other thing that actually would have served the thing better or integrates with the new communication channel better, so it's really hard to keep up.
So another question, and this is kind of coincidental. And Amit kind of touched on this. All three of your brands are B2B and B2C. You might, think immediately, New York Times, that's B2C, but you also have a B2B component. All three of you have that, and I'm curious about the nuances in your businesses between B2B and B2C. Are they the same? Are they different? How do you balance it? What strategies? You can pick any one of those questions and answer them. Kim, why don't you start?
Yeah, so the way we've built our customer acquisition model is basically as one funnel. So we try to get as many registrants to Coursera as possible, and then be really good at using AI to predict which of them we can funnel into higher LTV learning products like degrees or certificate programs, or which of them might become enterprise buyers over time. Which requires us to be smart about how we move people through those different segments. And so, over half of our degree students start as consumer registrants. Over 30% of our enterprise customers start through the consumer funnel as well. But I think that adds to the complexity because, again, if you're using we are using Marketo for B2B because it's a better use case there, but that didn't quite scale to our consumer platform when we're talking about millions of learners that we need to serve. So we needed to use a different platform or ESP for consumer. And so...
and what platform is that?
So... not really. Dicey waters here. We're using Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and we're exploring other options. Yeah.
There you go.
It's really complicated because there's so many different specific use cases, and you get something because it's going to work in one way, and then it starts to evolve really quickly.
So do you feel schizophrenic, and how does IT feel about all these different systems? How do you?
Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
As a company, actually, we just went through an organizational change, pulling into one operations team, and part of that, or one revenue operations team, and so part of that is to try to look across and help us bring those decisions together a bit more. We actually tried to centralize more of a biz ops function in engineering, but that didn't work as well because it was further removed from the use cases, so it's tricky.
That's really complicated. So wait, Keith, do you have the same schizophrenic situation?
Probably times two. So the New York Times really is truly a brand and a publisher, right, at the same time. And imagine the duality of, right now we have 135 million registered users, and we're really trying to turn those those Reggies into subscribers, right? That's our primary goal. And then we also have a B2B team, right? That's going out and making deals with like the New York City Public Library or school districts, right? Or companies, and companies get it all passed. And and it's so interesting because while it looks good at one point, it really starts to consume your actual business, right? At the end of the day, what we now have realized is that our ARPU, right, average price per user, is just as important as how many subscriptions that you actually have. So if you actually go out and kind of over-index on, look at all these business B2B deals I've done, I've effectively shrunk the market of people I can actually turn into subscribers, which then lowers my actual ARPU. So we're actually now trying to figure out how can we pivot and focus really on the subscriber. And like that's like the duality, right? Because like you have a whole B2B team who's really focused on trying to make those big deals, and then you have me and the marketers trying to turn everyone here into a subscriber or get you to our bundle. Get the bundle, by the way, if you're ready and if you're not news only.
Good job.
Yeah, but seriously, it's a very complicated thing. There's a lot of healthy tension in the room to see which is the right answer. But it's a good problem to have.
What about you, Shweta?
I would say yes, B2B, B2C. A couple of things. One is from a product perspective. How do we help make sure customers know that the different products belong to the same family? So for example, at the end of the tax filing experience, when you have a refund, we might show an experience that says, hey, you can deposit your refund in a Credit Karma money account, right? And so building that, but that connective tissue, a lot of it is that trust that it's an Intuit product. And so we are continuing to build this awareness and association between our cornerstone brands or our product brands and the Intuit brand. We recently refreshed our brand itself, the parent brand, Intuit brand itself, so that it could reflect the more modern fintech, global tech platform that we are.
Turned out great.
Yeah, and so that's what we are continuing to lean in with the B2C, B2B and B2C, more also the connection with the parent brand.
Do you have also two completely different stacks?
Yeah, we have, but we are also working on finding ways to have more commonality.
Okay. All right. So we are just a few minutes away from getting you to the big surprise in your libations. I do want to ask one quick question of all three of you to answer really briefly. A lot of people in this room market to you, and I'm curious to know how you would like to best be marketed to, like in this economy and this state. Who wants to go first?
I can go. I was listening to a panel earlier where the host was saying that he has a CMO friend who says he gets 500 sales emails a day, or 300 sales emails a day, and replies to all of them because he's nice. And I was like, I get definitely at least 100, and I don't reply to any of them. I probably reply to 5 a year, so apparently I'm really mean. But jokes aside, I think that the things that are, if you look at the landscape and you think about what you're trying to do as a CMO or as a marketer, there are so many different business problems you're trying to solve. And yes, the MarTech stack that enables all of your customer relationship is incredibly important, and it is one piece of so many different things. And if you think about the complexity of all of the companies on the LUMA-scape, of everyone in this room, it is just mind-blowing to figure out as a marketer. And this is just a marketing technology. Like, what about the ad tech side? You get the point. So it's just so crowded. And so I think the times where something stands out is when it's very much telling me information about my business or my competitors that I didn't already know through the type of tool or technology that is already offered, and then some clever engagement techniques, more around community building, like getting me together with other CMOs that are dealing with similar problems, or having me on a podcast, or things like that, to really break through. But it's really tough because it's probably complex for people in this room, and it's even more complex when you're also running a different business every day.
Fantastic. Keith, how do we get a hold of you?
You can. I don't really. I get tons of emails like you, right? And I ignore every last one of them. I just don't have the time or patience to I read them and I'm like, why am I wasting my time on this? And so I don't do that, and I send them all to spam. And I never really thought about this question before. Like, what would I actually want? I kind of like this. Like, this is the greatest environment here, because like I feel like now there are brands and there's people in here that I would actually pay attention to now, because I've had relationships with some of you today that I'd be like, oh, this is, you know, now I heard that brand twice and I know this individual. Or I really trust like my lieutenants on my team, right? So I think you're better off not pitching to me, but pitching to them, and letting them tell me that this is important for us.
That's really good. That's really good. What about you, Shweta?
I would echo Keith in terms of I've been taking notes. I've just learned so much about so many different companies that I wasn't aware, and I'm going to go back and connect them to some of the folks on my side. But the other piece is how are you helping solve a customer problem, like a problem that a customer like me might have, and just real world use cases would be more effective than random emails.
Very true. Well, perfect. We're exactly at time. Thank you for sticking with us, being the last panel of the day. I really appreciate you guys being here. And Terry, back to you. Thank you.